So today we're going to talk about the application of game theory using Airbus and Boeing. I even got a Lego airplane to justify my point. So just a quick recap on game theory. We did a very quick recap, and if you have not watched the first video, I'll just link it in the comments. So game theory is basically just strategic decision making, and what we want to do is really to analyze the behaviors and outcomes of this strategic decision making. So it's linked to token ecosystem because we want to understand how people behave, what's the outcome of their actions, and from there we want to understand what kind of mechanisms or governance we can put in place to ensure that their behaviors are in line with what we want. So let's go a little bit deeper into having a better example of understanding game theory. And as promised, I'm going to use Airbus versus Boeing because it's quite a good and easy, simple example. So Airbus versus Boeing. This is quite a fun thing. So in economics, we have different kind of markets. So you have monopoly, which is the famous example will be stuff like diamonds, De Beers, where they're just the monopoly player in the market. With the airplane industry, it's slightly different. It's a duopoly because you've got two big players in the market. Instead of a monopoly, which is one, duopoly is two. So we have Airbus versus Boeing. And this is a very interesting power struggle between both of them when we understand how they function, and one, Airbus or Boeing's behavior or actions will affect the other company's reaction in return. So this is a quick timeline of understanding where is the power struggle or what are the considerations that is related to game theory, and then we'll go deeper into understanding the game theory perspective of things. So Airbus versus Boeing. Airbus came into play in about 92, and before that Boeing was the monopoly in the market. Before that, they had more than 50% of market share, so they were the leader in the aircraft industry. And in 1993, they decided to create this thing called Very Large Commercial Transport, and then it was the jumbo jets, which is about 500 seaters, that was in place. So it's like your 777, and Boeing was the leader in that, and Boeing had most of the market share because they had the big planes, and other companies like Singapore Airlines and I think British Airways wanted big planes. So the biggest plane was Boeing 777, and they're selling like hotcakes. Then in 1995, they decided to create this. 93 to 95, they decided to create this big plane, which is Superjumbo jet from 500 to 1,000 capacity. This is a lot bigger, it's twice the usual size, and they wanted to collaborate together to create this. So, firstly, why do they want to collaborate? Because to create this, you need a lot of money in R&D, a lot of testing, a lot of trial, and if it's only one party going in, Airbus or Boeing, it's going to be very costly. So we'll see that a little bit later. And you want to share the burden and also share the success. Now, the outcome in 95. So in 93, Airbus and Boeing decide to come together and say, okay, let's be friends. Let's create this, very large plane, which is 500 to 1,000 seaters, because there were demands for it. I know Singapore Airlines is one of them. They wanted bigger planes. So they needed to come together to make bigger planes to satisfy the demand. But in 1995, Boeing kept delaying. So Airbus was ready, they had the funds they needed to put in, they had their research done, they were ready to collaborate and start executing the plan and start testing and trying and stuff like that. But Boeing kept delaying. Boeing said no, later, or let's check this out and check that out, and they kept delaying. So Airbus came up with, okay, if you don't want to do that together, then I'm going to create my A3XXX. It's basically a big plane to compete with Boeing 777. And then Airbus so that was good. All the investors on the Airbus side were supporting them. Then Airbus came and threatened them and said, well, that's going to be very costly for you. And for me, if I want to increase the size of the Boeing 777, I just need to extend a few parts of the plane. It's going to be much cheaper, and your project is just stupid. So because of that kind of statement, which was quite false, a lot of investors of the Airbus A3XXX decide to pull out. And so now they both are like, we're not going to move forward with that. So in 1998, Airbus really wanted to do this because Airbus needed to gain more market shares, and Airbus wanted to enter the space of bigger planes. So in 1998, they decided to just go ahead with Superjumbo jets, and then it's all over the newspapers and headlines saying that it's going to be produced. And then because they needed a lot of money, Airbus also fully integrated with all the different countries where it was supported by the government to give them subsidies to do R&D and to research and to execute. So that was quite successful, and in 2003, also because they're backed by so many of the big economies, Boeing lost their market leadership, and in 2005, the Airbus A380 was created. So if you don't know, Airbus A380 is a very, very big plane. You have 2 levels, and you can fit a lot of people in there. So that's where the real Superjumbo jet existed, and it threatened Airbus. It threatened Boeing 777, and Boeing 777 was they lost their market leadership, and then they needed to create a bigger plane to compete with the A380, and so the Boeing 787 was created. Then after that, in 2016, they're both caught to be flouting the global trade rules like the NAFTA for Boeing, and then there are also like other subsidy rules that they're arguing about with Airbus and EU. And then the NAFTA deal in 2017, thanks to the president of the US, was actually hurting Boeing, and so it really affected their market shares. And as you know, recently the Airbus 737 was also affecting the market shares of Boeing. But we're not going to focus on there. We're going to focus very specifically on the area of why did Boeing decide to delay, and how did they come to this decision, and how did Airbus and how did everyone react? Because we want to understand how a decision is made, right? We want to understand strategic decision making. So we're going to dive deeper into this to understand.